Okay.
I'm going to do the roll call, and then we'll go through the minutes and get those approved. Grace Absher, Ashley Bruce,
Present.
Brooke Hill,
Present.
Melissa Goins is coming late, I think.
Coming late, yeah.
Tom Haggard, Amity Kukla,
Present.
Rhonda Logsden,
I'm here.
Natasha Lucas,
Present.
Lauren Mitchell,
I'm here.
Jennifer Skidmore,
Present.
Mona Smith,
Here.
Julia Staten, Chris Medley.
I am here.
Does that cover everyone? Did I miss anybody? Okay. I sent you all the minutes, and I wanted to, I guess, have you all had a chance to review the minutes that I sent you? Need a motion to approve those minutes.
This is Ashley Bruce. So moved.
We have a second?
This is Chris Medley. I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you all. Minutes have been approved. Hand it back to you, Brooke.
Okay. We will hear from Commissioner Glass on education updates, and then we'll open the floor for any discussion questions that you guys might have for Dr. Glass. And then our agenda item for today is to review those missing piece recommendations from 2006. We are preparing an analysis and summary for KDE about what progress we've made as a state around family engagement since 2006 recommendations were published. And along with that update, we're also going to be preparing recommendations for how we close the gap on improving family engagement. This will also set a good tone for the 2024 FPC. So we have this meeting on September 7th, and that concludes our term as members. So we will talk a little bit about that in September, what it means for the council for 2024. So with that, I'll hand it over to Dr. Glass.
Thanks, Brooke. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see you and spend a few minutes with you. I know you've got a busy agenda, so I'll do my best to keep my updates short with you. As was mentioned earlier, most school districts in the state have started school either this week or last week. There are a few still trickling in, but we should have everybody going by around Labor Day. So it's an exciting time of year in schools. If you have worked in schools or around schools, it's really a wonderful time to get the whole staff together. It feels like a family reunion often when you can get all of the staff of all the buildings together. There aren't a lot of opportunities to do that. So it's special time for school employees. It's also a special time for people working in schools because they get to reconnect with students that they haven't seen all summer. Some of you know that my wife is a teacher in Fayette County, and she came home yesterday talking about some of the students she hadn't seen since last year, and all the hugs and catching up and reconnection with students and families. And it's a really special time for parents. I know this because I take my daughter to school in the morning, and it took us about 45 minutes to get in, and it usually takes us about 8. And that's because everybody was turning out to take their kid to school this week. So exciting time of year for everybody. Of course, this year hasn't been without its challenges at the outset of the school year, notably staffing concerns. So that contributed certainly to the Jefferson County's struggles getting open in their staggered start. Some of that related to staffing issues they were having with their bus systems. That's not isolated to Jefferson County. It's something that we're seeing in several parts of the state. We have had other districts in the state that have delayed opening because of either busing shortage concerns or other critical staffing shortage concerns. And so we've sort of been ringing this warning bell for many years, saying that this wave is coming, and we've seen the cracks start to form, and now it's starting to break down. So it's not entirely surprising that we've seen these challenges with getting open happen. For the past several years, we've seen the decline in the number of people entering teaching profession. We've seen struggles with hourly positions because the rates of pay and comparable private sector jobs have gone up faster than they have in our public schools. Then we started to see increasing numbers of unfilled vacancies, increased reliance on emergency certified staff. These trends, again, have been happening for several years. And again, we've been ringing this warning bell. And now we're starting to see some real impacts where school districts are just saying, we can't do it. This is a challenge that we have right now that we're going to have to work our way through. It not just in Kentucky, it's really a national challenge. We have fewer people going into education and education spending not keeping up with the pace of inflation. So that's causing some predictable labor market challenges for us. Other challenges that have happened at the beginning of this year, of course, there was a host of laws that were passed during the last session. One of the more, politically sparky and interesting ones was Senate Bill 150 and all the prohibitions on what could be taught and notices that had to be given, and the redesigns of curricular matters related to sexual or maturation instruction that typically had been taught in the 5th grade, had been for years. Now it's not. It's required to not be taught in the 5th grade. It has to be moved to the 6th grade. So that required realignment of student experiences in those 2 grades. We have standards that now are illegal to teach. Notices that need to be created. You may have seen some new forms that came out from school districts as schools were working to try and comply with the law. And then all sorts of implementation questions, because there's a lot of vague questions about how do we handle issues around if a student requests to be called by a certain pronoun or a student wants to talk about their sexual preference or identity, how do schools handle that? And so these are all questions that are coming up that school districts are having to think through from the interest of how do we best support the student and keep them safe and make them feel welcome and supported, because we are a public school system. That means we are open and supportive of everybody and all people from all walks of life. So those are challenges that schools are working to navigate right now, and how to implement that and what it means. And I think there's a good faith effort to try and comply with that law around the state, but it is challenging because it was sweeping and not a lot of input was taken in the construction of it. One of the issues that we'll continue to have to work through is it prohibits any instruction around gender identity, gender expression, sexual identity, sexual expression. And of course, we have psychology courses and medical courses and that touch on those issues, and some of which are connected to higher education credits. And so we really would be asking AP, advanced placement, or our institutions of higher education to change the curriculum. Some of the courses are also career technical courses that may be related to nursing or health fields that also require instruction in those areas. And so how does that work? And can a student really be, sorry, I've gone fuzzy here on my camera. Can students really be sort of certified or qualified as having earned those credits without access to that content? So it's not, again, something that's happening just in Kentucky. It's something that's happening around the country, in states that have passed similar laws to what we have now is struggling with how do we award credit or convey credentials around content when sometimes it's illegal to teach it. So that's a struggle that we're having at the outset of this year as well. Turning to the Department of Education, as some of you may know, I'm also the superintendent over the School for the Deaf and School for the Blind and our area technology centers around the state. So we've been struggling with some of those same questions that I mentioned around staffing and the implementation of Senate Bill 150, but we've worked through them just like everybody else and gotten open. It's been a fairly smooth year for KSD, KSB at Kentucky School for the Deaf. We have an interim principal right now. that's working and doing a great job as we try to finish up our search for permanent principal. And in our ATCs around the state, we've had a really smooth opening with those. We do have a few openings still we're trying to fill, but working to close those gaps as well. So some of the same staffing challenges that a school district we feel at KDE as we try to staff these programs that serve the entire state. Shifting to other matters at KDE, some of you may have seen that I have announced my transition and resignation from the Department of Education. I have a 60-day clause where I provide notice and work for 60 days, and then I'm released from my contract with the State Board of Education. I will say it's been an incredible professional honor to do this job in my home state. I've loved every minute of it, even in the hard times, and it's been great to connect and work with all of you. I'll be the Associate Vice President of Teaching and Learning at Western Michigan University, so I've never worked in higher education. I'm excited about that opportunity, and that works all around improving the experiences for students in higher education, which I guess is a fairly radical concept. I'm finding out that we should care about that and work to improve those experiences, and also expanding the reach of the university into their high school programs through dual credit coursework opportunities. So I'm excited about doing that work. We will keep our family here in Kentucky for a year. Our kids are in great schools in Fayette County. My wife's got a wonderful job. So I'm going to be a road warrior for a year, driving back and forth, and then we'll kind of reassess and see how it goes. But I'm looking forward to that chapter. And again, just want to say what an incredible honor it's been. The state board will meet later this month to talk about next steps. So they have posted their agenda today. It involves putting forth a search, RFP for a search firm. So they intend to run a national search. That will take some time to run that bid process and then run the search process. So there almost certainly will be an interim commissioner that will be announced, and more information will be available on that as the state board makes that decision and makes those announcements. And I'll work hard to make sure that those transitions are smooth and that the services we provide from KDE into the state continue uninterrupted. And the state board's focus is not changing, or has at least not changed yet. We did all of this work around United We Learn when I first became commissioner in Kentucky. It was a listening tour of what Kentuckians wanted for the future of their schools. So it's not really my agenda or the state board's agenda or the governor's or the legislatures. It's what Kentuckians told us they wanted. And they're things that most people really are supportive of. And it's around improving the learning experiences for our students, bringing innovation around assessments and accountability, and finding meaningful and novel ways to engage our families and our communities, which I know is something that's important to this group. So we continue on that path, and moving forward, those should be priorities that everybody should be able to rally around and want for their community schools. And the State Board of Education remains committed to that also. So I don't expect any major shifts in that direction going forward, but it will be a new commissioner coming in. So we'll see what changes happen with that. But Kentucky is a wonderful place to live and work. I'm sure that they'll find a very talented person. And again, it's been an incredible honor being your commissioner. Brooke, I'll turn things back over to you and see if there are any questions. Otherwise, I'll let you move through the rest of your agenda.
Great. Thank you for that update. And thank you for always being present for our meetings and just an advocate for families, family voice at the table, especially through not only this council, but the United We Learn tours and the Cool Council. So it's been an honor to work with you. And so thank you.
Thank you, Brooke.
Rhonda.
Can y'all hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
We can.
Okay, because I'm connected by the phone too. So, well, first and foremost, I want to thank you, because I figure you probably never thought you'd be coming in and you'd have to see us through everything we've all lived through together here. So we are grateful for you. But I also want to, and I'm thankful that you brought up about Senate Bill 150. And first, let me preface this with, I have no interest in getting into political debates or personal beliefs. My concern is for our students, for our children and youth who are going to be impacted by this. And huge concerns at that, and the equality for them, the opportunity to be represented across the board, that all of our, we've done so much work to try to help that all of our students, inequality and inclusion. And I feel that Senate Bill 150 has taken us backwards way more than we ought to ever, I could see a light of day, because it not only is going to affect our students, which is my number one concern, right? How do we see them through this? Because we are fostering, if we follow this law, which we have to, right? It's been put in place. We follow this law, we are fostering discrimination of a specialized group. And I'm not trying to get on here and preach. I just have grave concerns for the mental health, well-being, and equality for all of our students. Also, too, the families. And I'm not an expert on any of this, and I'll tell you, and I always will. But from what I've read, and I keep rereading it, we're tying the hands of the Kentucky Department of Education. We've tied the hands of the districts to promote to where everybody is represented. And I just have grave concerns and honestly don't see how something like this, in the depth and all of the things that it goes down through, could have ever been constitutionally passed, so I just have grave concerns because we want everybody to not only be represented, but not have to be segregated. You look at different things through that where people, it's very concerning. And I don't know how, when we're being forced to all do this, how we work forward to ensure that equality and inclusion for all of our students.
Well, thank you for that perspective, Rhonda. We've published some guidance analyzing Senate Bill 150 and identified that we think there are conflicts with the U.S. Constitution and with federal law, but we have to presume that the law is constitutional and in compliance with federal law until proven otherwise. And so there are court cases that have already come forward related to it. There probably will be more of those as time goes on. So we'll see if it can withstand the scrutiny of situations that may be U.S. constitutional challenges or conflicts with federal law. So we'll see what happens with those going forward. There may be adjustments to it that the legislature enacts. They certainly have the ability to go in and adjust their own law to correct some of those challenges. One of those that came up was this and or gate, I guess is how I would phrase it. The error, the typo that they put in the law, because honestly, I think it happened because they were rushing through at the end and not reading very clearly. But they would prefer that we use and, but that's not what the law says in relation to some choices that districts have in implementation. So we may see some adjustments in the law around things like that, or other adjustments that have come forward since that time as the legislature starts to realize some of the consequences or unintended or intentional related to this. So there may be some adjustments. And then I think every educator is going to have to decide for themselves how they engage with this from a professional ethics standpoint. For me, I have a responsibility to execute the laws faithfully in the state of Kentucky. That's my job as commissioner, and that it did not fit well with my personal values or my professional ethics to carry out this law, and so that's why I have resigned. But I respect everybody's going to have to make their own decisions around what's right for them.
Lauren?
Thank you. I want to know, is there guidance for parents? Because parents, how many parents, for example, follow the legislature and know what Senate Bill 150 even is? Probably not as many as we think. And then how do we encourage, educate their students at home with changes, with the nursing aspect of it? Just parents are being inundated with having to sign a lot more forms, and half of it doesn't even make sense. Like, what, we're not told why. Is KDE doing anything to help prepare parents so that we do know what's going on?
Yeah, excellent question. You broke up a little bit through that, Lauren, but I think I got the gist of it. It's really what supports are available to parents. And honestly, we haven't provided anything specific to parents. That's an area I'll take from this advisory that is something that we can work on at KDE. I appreciate you raising this, sort of making sense of it for parents. We have issued guidance for districts, but really that guidance is intended for districts and really their legal counsel on what to think about. And it's complex and deep too, and footnoted with legal references, and so it's not easy. So it really wasn't intended as a parent's guide. You are seeing, and I'm seeing this as a parent too, more sort of approvals as parents for your students to receive any counseling or nursing services. That was part of Senate Bill 150. So the district has to ask if it's okay if they provide any of those services and notify you if they do. And depending on the age of your student, there may be other notices that are coming forward. So that's why you're seeing more of that. Some districts are referring back to Senate Bill 150 as the reason that they're doing that. But I completely agree that it's not easy. It's not easy for districts and for school personnel who are further and further removed from this, and certainly not easy for parents. I appreciate the recommendation that we work on a parent's guide, and so I'll take that back to our team. I really appreciate you raising that forward. That's a great idea.
And then have them send it back through us for feedback.
Yeah, thank you. Well, we can certainly use this group as to help vet that, to say, does this make sense and is it helpful? Yeah, I think honestly, because I as a short timer, I have the benefit of being able to be just really forthright with you. The staff of the department is really sort of nervous about saying anything. Because I'm an example of, if you speak out against this, there's punishments that are associated with that. So I think there's some hesitancy to engage with it at all. And so we'll have to work through that. I've really encouraged the staff to be brave, that you have to be brave in the face of things like this. If not us, who? And we have to do that. And that's our role and responsibility. But that's part of what we're experiencing at the department right now, as well as is fear of being retaliated against by providing support.
Yeah. I also think that parent organizations all across the state need to step up their advocacy efforts and notification of parents of things like SB 150 coming out, and getting ahead of it in advance to where we can notify people. And that's something that we're planning on working towards, being more proactive with those things in Frankfort and notifying people of what's going on. So.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. And of course, at least the stated intent of 150 was to empower parents in some ways that they hadn't been empowered before. I think there's could be plenty of healthy debate as to whether or not this does that or not, and what else it does in addition to that stated purpose. But parent sort of empowerment was one of at least the stated goals of this legislation from the outset.
Any other comments or questions for Dr. Glass?
When you do provide guidance for parents, I think that teachers are having the same hesitancy that KDE staff are. And so I think coming from the top down, encouraging staff on the school level to talk with parents about what's going on might be helpful, because we aren't getting much information. And, just a question that arises is, if my child gets hurt and starts bleeding, are they allowed to be treated if you have forgotten or haven't signed this consent, or is it just a mental health thing? So there are a lot of questions that are being raised that parents can't get answers to.
Yeah, and back to that, there are all sorts of unanswered questions about that. Certainly, I don't think it would have been the intent of Senate Bill 150 is if you had an emergency that no one can provide medical services unless there's an express permission granted. A longstanding legal framework for schools is something called in loco parentis. That means that when the parent is not present, the staff at the school can act as the parent to provide medical care in emergency situations, just like you've described. So now we start encroaching on in loco parentis, some with the restrictions that are in Senate Bill 150. So what does that mean, and where are the lines? Those are some of the questions I think we're going to have to wrestle with, and unfortunately, they may have to be tested in court or in real situations. But part of the purpose of this law and other laws is really to create hesitation and fear among educators. And so you see lots of our educators around the state, lots of school districts around the state that are putting in place policies and practices that go far beyond what Senate Bill 150 even calls for, because they're afraid and they want to make sure that they're not sued over Senate Bill 150. I think that the general counsel in Louisville, Kevin Brown, who of course used to be the general counsel here at KDE and was an interim commissioner, said it well, is you're probably going to get sued either way. So if you implement Senate Bill 150, you perhaps are in violation of constitutional issues or federal law, and so you may get sued over that. And if you don't implement it, you're violating state law, and you may get sued over that. So I think all districts in the state, it's one of the things I said from the outset, are struggling through sort of how do we implement this. But one of the effects is that in the ambiguity, people revert to fear and they just pull back and wait for something to happen. And so we see that happening right now. I see Rhonda's put our guidance up. And so again, if you need some material to help with your sleeping, that may be good for you. It is complicated and legal, but it really is, if you want to geek out on this stuff, it is a fascinating legal read to see what exactly Senate Bill 150 does and doesn't do, and then how it entangles with all these other really interesting, I call them interesting, now that I can sort of get some distance from it, interesting legal and policy questions that it creates. So I certainly, have great love and appreciation for the state of Kentucky. It's my home state, and I hope Kentucky gets this figured out, because I want our schools and our kids to succeed, and navigating this is going to be part of our future for the next several years. So thanks, Brooks. Thanks everybody for your time and attention. I'll take that idea that you gave me, Lauren, back and see if we can work on that. And I appreciate the chance to interact with all of you.
Thank you so much. All right, it's a good update. I am going to move us on with the rest of our agenda. It's going to be a hard right turn here. Okay, does everybody see that? Good. Okay, great. So I think what we had planned for this agenda is even more timely, given that there's going to be an interim commissioner, and there might be a little bit where this council is kind of without someone that we're directly working with at KDE. And also we're coming up on the end of our 2-year terms, which Leslie, I think I understood from an email from you that there are optional ways for people to extend their term. Could we pause for that explanation just real quick?
Sure. All of the standing committees are on a 2-year, they're 2 years. And if they want to come back to be on the council, then yes, those, I think it's 6 or 7 of you all were selected by your agency to represent that agency. And some of our other folks who are with the co-ops, I think there's 6 or 7 co-ops, I think, and they are represented here also. And so I don't see a problem with those folks because they're parents, unless if some of you have served 2 years and some of you haven't served 2 years, I'll need to go through that, Brooke, and look and see, because some of you guys just came on. So I'll get that together and I'll let you know more on that. Maybe at our September 7th meeting. I'm going to start planning for the 23-24 year, probably later in September or October. So I will let you know where you all stand. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yes,
Sure.
absolutely. So what I heard is everyone's on board for another 2 years. That's what I heard.
Okay. Well,
Okay.
let me just make
We're-
sure.
We're
but-
all staying in this together.
Right. And definitely the folks that are on the standing committees
Yes.
are definitely. And like I said, I think that we've had some turnover with our co-op parent representatives. And I just need to check back through my minutes and our minutes, I mean, and see who's been here for how long. So hopefully we'll all get to stay together.
Awesome. Thank you, Leslie.
You're welcome.
So just to revisit our purpose, we serve in an advisory role to the Kentucky Department of Education. Our job is to provide input regarding topics of interest to families, such as ways that families and communities can assist schools in ensuring that achievement level of all students is increased. That is our mission. And as a reminder, there's other like councils. There's a principal one, there's a superintendent, there's a student, there's special education. So there's other councils that meet with this same kind of focus in mind. Our narrow lens is, what does it mean for family partnership and family voice within our schools? The reason we know that this is so important is because the best predictor of students' success is the extent to which families encourage learning at home and involve themselves in their child's education. I'll kind of get to a document that shows this, but just for a little bit of level setting, we know that when family partnership is effective, students have higher grades and test scores, more positive attitudes and behavior in school, higher graduation rates. We know that for educators, they have greater success motivating and engaging students of diverse backgrounds. There's more support for families, and there's stronger morale and professional satisfaction, and an increased teacher retention. Families have better rapport with their teachers and staff. They have a greater understanding of their child's progress and how to help and what's happening in schools, a little bit what we were just talking about with the commissioner, and more knowledge and skill in advocating for their child. Overall, schools are more positive school climate. They have greater retention, like I said, of teachers and a better reputation and support from the community. So those are the benefits when family partnership is strong. So we have a really good why for what we're doing. One way to think about family partnership is just it's the rocket ship analogy, and I just give that to you guys as advocates out in your community for family partnership. This is the research-based way to talk about family engagement in a way that resonates with the public, with educators, policymakers. So the National Association for Family, School, and Community spent a lot of money doing a research study on how you explain family engagement in a way that resonates with people that don't intuitively get it. And this is the analogy that stuck and worked. And it's the idea that just like we need lots of different expertise to launch an astronaut into space, we need lots of different expertise around a student to launch them on to success. So the parents play a role, the teachers play a role, community plays a role. We have to figure out how we all work together so that we can all be in our role. What we believe as this council and what we're ensuring is reflected in our schools are these 4 core beliefs. All families have dreams for their children and want the best for them. All families have the capacity to support their children's learning. Families and school staff are equal partners. And most importantly, that the responsibility for cultivating and sustaining partnerships among school, home, and community rests primarily on the school staff, especially school leaders. So we can prepare families all we want to be advocates for their kids. If the schools aren't ready for families to engage them, then the partnerships won't work. So that brings us to kind of our task at hand, which I think you guys, some of you all, we've been emailing back and forth. I've had phone calls with some folks, and some folks filled out the document. So wherever you landed on that, thank you so much. And if you didn't have time to do it, that's okay, because we're going to do it together today. We are kind of coming back to this 2006 agenda item of this group. So the CPAC in 2006. So CPAC was the commissioners Parent Advisory Council. We've been since renamed to the Family Partnership Council. Their task was to standardize family engagement. What does it look like to track family engagement, to kind of score schools in a rubric way so that it's not like, hey, we're pretty good at family engagement. Yeah, we're all right. How do you know? What are you looking at to score yourselves in terms of family engagement, effective family engagement? Not only did they create a rubric, which we've kind of revitalized and brought back through family-friendly schools, they also had 4 recommendations to the Department of Education. I'm proposing that this council kind of readopt those 4 recommendations as our standing charge as an advisory council to say, how are we doing across those 4 recommendations? And what else do we need to be doing to ensure those things are happening? A lot of work went into those 4 recommendations, and they're really solid and have held the test of time. It might help this group to kind of reestablish itself inside those 4 recommendations. So these are the 4 that is, again, in the missing piece of the proficiency puzzle, and I'll stick it in the chat box as you guys get to chit-chatting. But the 4 are: 1, to set high expectations, measure performance, and report progress around family engagement; to help schools improve relationship building and two-way communication; that KDE shall provide resources and support; and that 4, we need to build the capacity through professional development for families, educators, how to collaborate, and evaluation efforts for family engagement. That was the charge of the CPAC to KDE in 2006. Where we're at now is saying, 1, how far have we come? Have we done any of these things? Like, what does it look like in 2023? And then kind of what does that lead us to in terms of recommendations for the Department of Education and the council that begins in 2024? So thinking about these over this meeting and our September 7th meeting, and being in a place where we can present those recommendations to KDE. So I'm going to pause there just for questions, feedback, conversation.
This is Jennifer. I have a question.
Yeah.
As I was working through my research on this, what is the expectation for September 7th for the product of what you want from us? Do you want a report? Do you want specific bullet points? What product on my end that I should be producing for you?
Yeah. So I am going to share a Google Doc. What I had hoped in that kind of assignment was that we could use our time together to go into breakout rooms and really dive into those 4 based on how you signed up. We can't do breakout rooms because we're live streaming right now. And so we have to, this is a public meeting. So we are not able to go into breakout rooms. And I think it would be kind of tough to talk through them in detail together. But I do want to share where we are. I'm going to share the link of the Google Doc, and it's in our Google folder. And it's the draft of the product. And so really it's bulleting what's happening in each of those 4 recommendation areas. So I do want to bring those up today and get feedback from you all if you feel like it captures everything. So I had it pulled up, now it's going. Let me grab it. But no, that's a great question. So here's kind of the draft of the report in progress. It might be better just to I'm going to put the link in the chat box. Oh, did you already do it? Oh no, it's a different one. All right, so there's the link, and I'll also screen share. So this would be our kind of memo to KDE to say, here's where we are, and here's where we recommend this group moves next. It starts with the why, just to anchor family engagement in the research, which is what I just read to you all. The 4 missing piece recommendations from this council in 2006. And then let me zoom in a little bit. And then, if you go to the end here, background. This is the landscape collection summary of what's happening across the state in each of the 4 areas. So trying to get this down to 5 to 7 high point bullets for each one, so it's not too overwhelming to read. So I would love for you guys to take a minute now. Again, we can't go into breakout rooms and look through here. I think I've got Frisk, Kentucky Spin. Lauren, I believe you've looked at it. Mona, I think you've looked at it. Jennifer, Chris, is it Amity? Can you say?
Yes, you're saying it's Amity. You're saying it correctly.
Okay. Amity, this is probably the first time you all are seeing this document. There was a little pre-homework before this. That's what Jennifer's referring to. And that you picked one of these 4 and did your own homework and trying to understand where we're at.
Yeah, I did that. I
Oh, you
picked
did?
one.
Okay, great.
And I added it to the notes on that Google Doc.
Great. So I can still start bringing some of that over. I didn't want it to get too long, but I did want to ground our recommendations in kind of a state of the union. So
Was that the homework where I think the one I chose, I don't see on this document, but I might not be scanning right. It was, mine was what our schools or what places are providing resources. Was it that one? There were 4 questions.
Yep, number 3.
Okay.
So Chris, for PTA, I have set family engagement standards and provide coaching and training in terms of resources and support around family engagement. For PTA, you probably want to skim and include, there's probably a bullet for each that PTA does in each of these 4. I can't imagine everything.
Yeah, Kathy included me a little bit on it, and she and I are working together on it. So
hold that for now, because let me kind of start with the end in mind and show you what's sort of coming out of this. So some key identified needs that we're seeing as people are kind of bringing together what's happening is a need to streamline some of the family engagement supports and metrics for schools. So different folks are measuring family engagement in different ways, and that can be kind of confusing and hard for schools to kind of rally around one central way of doing it. So how can we have more of a streamlined effort? That in some of our family engagement efforts, we're centering different things rather than centering that recommendation of relationship building and two-way communication. So how do we have more practices in place that center relationship building and two-way communication as how we're defining meaningful family engagement? Rhonda's brought up, and I feel like it was reiterated today again, more family-facing messaging from KDE that just speaks to what's coming down, that we have superintendent messaging, we have teacher messaging. Where's the family-facing messaging? Where's the family website? What does that look like that that families would actually use, and that speaks to what families need to hear? And again, is just like that access to information, knowledge, and resources. So that kind of came out. These are the recommendations that are currently drafted. So this is like a drum roll, please. In doing our analysis, collecting that information, which we still need to do more of. We've got this meeting September 7th, and mid-October is when we'd like to submit recommendations. Here they are. First, we'll just kind of run through them and then open it up for feedback. 1, research other state examples and national expertise on school report card metrics that capture meaningful family engagement. What could be a new, be it optional, it would have to be an optional report card metric that Kentucky could use. An example may be the percent of families who report they have a trusting relationship with at least one school staff member. So right now in the school report card, it's parent-teacher conference show rate. I think it's number of parent events, number of families who voted in the SBDM election, and I believe number of families serving on SBDM. So one recommendation would for KDE would be, let us explore other state examples of what else could be added. And maybe we'll like stop there for a second just to get some, you guys, your minds hopefully are just racing. Feedback on recommendation 1, researching other state examples and national expertise on a more meaningful school report card metric to capture family engagement.
I know
I think
that when
that is,
oh, sorry.
go ahead.
When KASC was still doing its annual, or yeah, its big meeting of the year, part of it was schools that did that really well presenting and other schools taking note of it and taking those notes back with them to their home schools and their home districts. And it was very helpful to see practically, how are you guys implementing this and what are you doing? We no longer have that convention. So how can we, maybe KDE could highlight schools that are doing it well and give practical, like, here's how they're doing it. Here's why they're doing it. Here's how you could do it. It was just really helpful to hear from schools that had fabulous family engagement and how they were going about doing it, giving real world examples, I guess, because you can say you need better family engagement, but if you don't have something to encourage and or kind of guide, it's not really helpful.
And I was just going to say, I think those former measurements aren't a true representation of who is involved in our schools, or at least I see that in my case. I feel like I'm a very engaged parent, but there were no parent conferences held for my son who was in 6th grade last year. I voted on one student or site-based council election. I didn't vote on the other. So, and yes, that is my bad, but I feel very involved, and I feel like our school district allows for parent involvement. But again, I do think the new measures would be helpful.
So what I capture there for that one is as we think about bringing forth this recommendation, that it would kind of come along with a highlight, that KDE would highlight schools that are doing that optional metric really well with an explanation of how they're doing it. So if I'm a school and I'm like, I don't know how the heck to do this, there's kind of a bank of way of saying, oh, here's who's killing it and how they're doing it. Is that what you're saying, Lauren? Okay, and then Mona, yeah. I hear you saying, maybe showing that although you're capturing these things, I'm a really engaged parent and you wouldn't have captured me in any of that.
Right.
Okay. That's a good take, because it's not all about like, gotcha. It's also about, sometimes there's not a way to brag about the things that are working really well. And those numbers may be misleading. You didn't have a lot of people vote, but you've got a lot of engagement.
A good example of that was when one of our schools, their rating went way down because the test scores reflected that. But what the scores did not reflect was how much improvement we had within those test scores.
Right.
So.
I like that too, an improvement metric. Okay. And again, this is what we'll kind of take with us. This is in response to recommendation. That's what the R number 1, number 2 is. So this is in response to kind of what we were seeing come through for 1 and 2. So, okay, So we'll,
I think
put that. Yeah, go ahead, Rhonda.
Oh, I was just going to say, if we could also put in there for greater representation of special populations within the school report card, because there are some, and I do see where Kentucky goes above many other states, but especially when you look at it, it is very telling for different groups. And the outcomes for them. I think we need to see more of that across the board, more of a breakdown, especially for our minority groups across the board.
That's a really good point. At our SBDM training that just took place a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about school safety. And in order to come into a school, you have to have an ID to be involved and to volunteer. But we have a very high migrant worker population here, and they don't have Kentucky IDs. Therefore, we're essentially telling them you're not welcome in our schools because you can't even step foot in the door. And so we were trying to figure out, how do we keep our schools safe, but how do we still get those populations of parents that typically aren't involved encouraged to be involved without scaring them, without overwhelming them, and without making our schools unsafe? It's a big question that is difficult to answer.
Other comments on recommendation 1? Thoughts to consider? Or even just support for it. The other thing is we have to get it down to 3 or 4. So we've got to nix 2 of these recommendations. So also, if you feel like, that's pretty cool, but I wouldn't put it in the top 5, top 3, 4. We want to be thinking about that too. There were 8 recommendations, and they have gotten kind of distilled down to the 6. 2 somewhat goes with 1, so they may be able to be merged into 1 recommendation. Explore a relationship building and communications metric that can be added to the KDE strategic dashboard. So you have your individual school report cards, and then KDE has its report card, which is called the strategic dashboard. And for family and community engagement on the strategic dashboard right now, the only metric is the number of family-friendly certified schools, which we felt like was a huge win, because the certified schools, the first 2 objectives are relationship building and 2-way communication. So it is a way that we're capturing those 2, but that is the only metric that's up right now for family and community engagement. So it would be a task of this group to come up with, what could another strategic dashboard metric be? Feedback on that recommendation. Or you can say, Brooke, I don't agree with that recommendation. Take it off there.
That would be me. I think number 1, family engagement is, how do we relationship build and communicate with families? I think that one's redundant.
Do you think it's enough to recommend it for the individual school report card, and it may or may not bubble up to the KDE strategic report card, but leave that one alone?
I'm just thinking, how many parents actually read the KDE report card? So again, I think it's redundant, because as long as you have it at your local level, it's probably more seen by parents, I guess. More likely to be seen by parents.
Okay, that's good. Other thoughts? Jennifer, what are you thinking?
Well, since you said,
Connie out. I can tell our wheels are turning.
I'm really just absorbing at this point.
Okay.
so
Go ahead, Brenda.
since in the first one we say, research the other state example, or you know, I mean, like you said, it could be folded in with the first one. Not that you would do away with it, but that's just one example of, you know, an extension of what could be there. Right?
Maybe
So
just-
if you do it in the school report card and through the strategic dashboard. And that way you're going to build in that consistency and have it there.
Maybe that captures a relationship building and communications metric.
Communications metrics, yes.
Yeah, I'm just really processing whether or not 1 and 2 are just repeats or redundancies of one another, if they can be joined. And how to do so.
So this is kind of the
Do we
question
have
on,
access?
yeah, it's in the
Do we
chat
have
box
access to this? Okay.
to this document. If I'd let you talk, you could get your question out. Is that what you were checking?
Yes.
There it is again. Again, I wish we could be in breakout rooms. I think it would be more productive, but we can't. So thank you all for bearing with me. I think it's a good consideration. And we don't have to make that executive decision right at the moment. We can let that sit. I've got this added. And feel free to get in here if you're somebody that needs to play in it. Three kind of switches gears. Explore Kentucky's. So what we saw in the examples being sent in was a lot with state, a lot hyper local and school level, not a whole lot that came in as district led. So we started thinking about what could be a recommendation that puts some of this at the district level through our local school boards. So again, it's just exploring. It's not like a hardcore, this is what we're going to do. But number 3 recommendation is explore Kentucky's and other states' examples where local school boards set the expectation for schools to use research-based self-assessment tools that capture family input and have a continuous improvement component. That might be too many words. Set the expectation that schools are doing meaningful family engagement. In addition, what are other ways school boards can help schools prioritize family partnership, such as having it as a standing agenda item to review progress and highlight bright spots among the district? So this recommendation is really that KDE would, set some guidance. We could help create it, that local school boards own family engagement processes a little more, and that it's as a standing agenda item on local school board meetings. It wouldn't be a requirement. It would just be some tools and examples of how local school boards could help kind of set the expectation and celebrate when schools are doing strong family engagement activities. So I throw that out there to anybody that's actually been on a local school board. How does that recommendation feel for you?
This is Jennifer. I'd like to speak to that for just a second. I was just talking with my husband about this before our meeting, and he is on the local school board, and he's also on the Kentucky School Boards Association. And so he's on the Barberville Independent Schools, and he was just sharing with me that our schools use the Infinite Campus portal, and they do the Gear Up reports, and they upload all of their participation with families through the Gear Up reports and into Infinite Campus with families, and then share that with supervisors, and then move that on through district levels and up through the states as well. And I know we use our family resource, the Frisk Centers as well. I think that's how you pronounce it, the FYRSC centers as well for all of our family engagement at our local district level.
Your
that-
first reports to your local school board? Is that what you said?
I think so. I think all of the family engagement is measured through Frisk locally. I'll have to check on that, but I'm pretty sure that's how they are doing it here.
So they could possibly be the one to kind of speak to the family engagement happening at the local school boards.
Yes. Yes, and I know that they're both with the city schools and the county schools. I'll look into this also. There were new grant opportunities that were offered in our area where they hired specific staffing for each of the schools specifically for family engagement. And there's an individual placed at each of the local city and county schools for family engagement who will be responsible for reporting everything as well. But I don't think that that's Frisk or Gear Up. I want to say that's a completely separate program that's grant funded. I'll look at that while we're talking and try to get some more information for you.
Okay, great. And if it's a current happening, feel free to kind of catalog it inside our background section.
Okay, thank you.
Thoughts on this one? Other folks that have experience, perspective from the school board side about this recommendation?
I'm not from the school board side.
That's okay.
But my concern and my hesitation from a family's perspective is that if we don't set the stage and the standard, at the state level, and we leave it up to be determined, we are going to end up in the same shape that we've found ourselves in, where it is going to vary. And if you find it a priority or not, my worry is setting the standard that we expect that as a state from our districts. Yes, letting districts be able to shape it, because each, we all have different cultures. But I just worry of that. Is it going to take place if we leave it just to the local level? Am I making sense?
What I hear
And
you
how do we
saying-
ensure that it happens?
Okay. What I hear you saying is that this should really be an expectation from KDE, because if we leave it to individual school districts, it may or may not happen. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So-
and that it's authentic too, how we not only do it, but the again, like you were talking about, the tools that would be critical. This is how it should look for authentic family engagement. And this is expectations that we set for our state. I think it's going to be critical for the follow through.
So, okay, so two things that I'm thinking with that. One is that, this would be sort of in addition to all the things already required within, Title I, and we already have quite a few family engagement requirements of our schools that come from KDE. Most of those come from KDE kind of straight into the schools. I think this recommendation was trying to capture, could the local school boards be a place that supports the implementation of family engagement and a place that kind of highlights best practices for the district, rather than being so this is more about like a support and continuing to highlight, not the heavy hand.
Yeah. So, but what I would make sure that I do is that, because we don't want people to think that this is going to, because a lot of times there could be that miscommunication, right? Is that this isn't going to change those other requirements, because sometimes I see people where you're going to have to be very intentional with your message and what this applies to, so that what it's intended for is what it actually ends up. Because, I just have seen too many times where, that we have good intentions with stuff, but then it ends up causing more of a mess than could be. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Does that capture your concern? Be careful with messaging, Kira, that we're not overriding existing expectations and requirements from KDE. So for me, that what needs to jump off the page, I think, is the highlighting bright spots among the district and standing agenda item. That to me is the big thing. So we might want to consider. It's almost like I wonder if we nix that. And we just.
That was gonna be my suggestion as well. We just
Okay.
really focus it down onto being a support and voice for what's happening in the district.
To
I
being
do
a
like
voice.
having it.
Go ahead.
I like having it at the local level because I come from a very small town called Midway, and what our family engagement versus a Jefferson County schools engagement is probably going to look different. So having it at the local level and highlighting which schools, even maybe which teachers are doing it well, I like that idea. I think that's great.
Okay.
This is
Good.
Jennifer again. I have the information too when we're ready.
Yeah. Okay, great. Is this more of a, I'll put it as a note here, even though it might go at the bottom.
Oh, are you waiting on me?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Sorry, I'm sorry. Okay,
You're right.
the position is called a full service community school coordinator, and all of the city and county schools have these positions this year here in rural Knox County, and 6 other counties as well. And they work for the Partners for Rural Impact is the grant.
Great. That is a great plug. And we should add that at the bottom too, as part of what's happening in Kentucky. So I love that. And actually, Kentucky is home of, so Pritchard Committee has a statewide scaling grant, and Partners for Rural Impact has a statewide scaling grant. And the only other statewide scaling grant is in Puerto Rico. So Kentucky has 2 statewide scaling grants for full service community schools, which is huge, and definitely worth noting if we haven't already.
Yes, so I think her role, if I understood it right, was specifically to enhance that parent family reporting and that community involvement and that measurement and the reporting piece of it.
I am going to put that in this section, and honestly could probably be. Yes, you're correct. So in the full service community schools, there's 4 pillars of a community school, and one of those pillars is family and community engagement. And so a key focus area for these coordinators is to improve the family and community engagement and every school gets a full service community schools coordinator. We can also think about our FRISC serving in this role, and ensuring that there's family and community engagement. So this is going to be huge over the next 5 years. It's a 5-year grant. So through 2027, we're going to see full service community schools making a huge impact on family and community engagement across Kentucky. So I'm glad you pulled that up and that we've got it noted here. In that same thought, number 4, and you guys will have access to this, and please, I hope you'll come in here and add stuff between now and September 7th. So we're looking at a fresh document on September 7th that has everybody's thoughts in here. So don't feel like you can't go back. Number 4, similar to what you were just talking about, or building on a state scaling grant, our recommendation, many states have a full-time family and community engagement manager that sits at their department. We have lots of folks that play that role in conjunction with other roles, but we don't have in Kentucky a full-time person who's looking at just family and community engagement best practices that sits at the department. So number 4 is exploring how KDE might sustain a full-time family and community engagement manager at the department to oversee all of these strategies that we're talking about, collect and share local best practices. So kind of that highlighting that you were talking about, Lauren, that's the person that could own that, and aligning family engagement practices within KDE and across state partners. So someone that actually sits at the department who's helping connect what's required in Title I to the PTA family engagement standards. Although everything can't talk, it would be really cool to have someone that's looking at how things could be streamlined all the time and highlighting what's working. You know, we say the Pikeville to Paducah, somebody who's looking at what's working really well in one county and how do we replicate it in another. The note on this one is that through the Pritchard Committee grant, we are funding a full-time person to sit at KDE to oversee the community schools work through 2027. With family and community engagement being one of the pillars of the grant, this could begin to kind of shape what a full-time person might look like. And gives it 5 years of funding and support so that we can continue to explore and work on this recommendation while we already have someone semi playing that role. Okay, thoughts and feedback there. Chris, you were nodding a lot, which means you're going to get picked on. I'm going to pick people who nod a lot.
So on this one, I definitely see the value. Absolutely. I think that having someone focused at that level would be good to coordinate with the various school districts and school boards. I think I have similar concerns around the focus of each different district and each different school board and each different school, that would get kind of overwhelming. But it also may be very manageable. That's a little, I see it going one of two ways pretty much. It could either be a fantastic addition to KDE, or it might be to where we just end up relinquishing control back to the districts, and it ends up being, kind of an empty seat. So
okay, so you're feeling like a manager at KDE to oversee family and community engagement. Tell me more about how that might get confusing at the district level.
I just have similar concerns to what we talked about previously in scope. Like Louisville and Lexington, they have their own kind of family engagement programs and concerns, but each of the other school districts are going to be vastly different. And I don't know. I guess I need to sit on that one. I guess I need to sit on that one for a while. It's
great.
Kind of
yeah. No, absolutely. This is the first time most people are seeing these, so time to process is going to be important. So just so we capture it and we can come back to it, that family engagement looks different in different school districts, across school districts, central KDE person might. So that might not work, maybe, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think on the flip side of that, those differences, I think there's a lot to learn from that too.
Absolutely.
I'm just speaking from what I know up here. The River City schools like Dayton Independent, Newport Independent, Covington Independent, very different from Boone County, Kenton County, Campbell County, and very different from Beechwood Independent or Fort Thomas Independent. But I think there's value in sharing your experiences and ideas of what works, because although the culture might be very different in some ways, you can still, room to learn from that. So I think someone who's kind of the center go-to point, because more and more districts are getting people in those positions who are in charge of family engagement, and having, you know, a group or someone for them to go to who is then in charge of getting the ideas and what's working, what's not working out could be very valuable. But again, we don't know how that'll work until we try.
Well, and I
That-
think that having that
okay.
expert at that level, is because many do not realize, unless you're in special education, that there are family engagement, there are indicators within special education. And so having the expert at the state level that is going to know all of those and how they play a role, because things are so siloed, that yes, we may do things a little bit different, but we all have to abide by those, you know, state and federal requirements and understand how those play a part with one another. I think having a key point of contact for that is going to be critical, because you can get different answers from different people. Does that make sense? And not that they're going to tell them, but I think that they need that expertise to be able to go to at a state level, that families do, but also then too, whoever may have the position within the district.
Okay, that's good. I hadn't thought in that way, like really defining that this person, and I hope I've caught this right. You guys be like, that is not what I said. But what I think you're saying is that this position needs to be more about collecting and communicating what's happening in different districts, kind of hold that family engagement expertise, maybe creating some loose guardrails with best practices, which is really KDE's way anyway. I feel like the KDE way of doing things is to say, here's the process, rather than here's the list of what to replicate. Like, you have to make it make sense in your local district. So I think this would be really in line with kind of how KDE thinks about guidance and supervision anyway. So I love that, rather than being the person that's like walking around making sure everybody's doing it right.
Right. That definitely sounds it's even more of a day-to-day operation / committee chair kind of role, where they just kind of gather in all of the stuff, but on the day-to-day would have the answers. Does sound like it could definitely work.
Okay, great. Good. So helpful. Other people's thoughts on that? Anything else you want to add that you don't feel like I got?
I just have a question.
Yeah.
Does each district employ someone who has it under their umbrella, monitoring or facilitating family engagement? Does each district have a position like that?
I'm going to say no.
Okay. Oh,
I
Melissa,
don't think
yeah.
I don't think ours
Hello.
does.
I'm going to say no, and I think this. Hello, everyone. I'm Melissa. I'm sorry I'm late. I'm going to say no, and I think that this might go back to earlier conversation with the example from, I think it was Bardstown or Barberville, I can't remember, where there's kind of the Frist are doing some things and Gear Up are doing some things, and then we have our full service community schools work doing some things. Some districts hire family engagement people. I know Fayette County for a long time had a family engagement person. I don't know if they're still there. I know some of our Frists have hired family engagement liaisons. That's what they've called them in the past when they've had the budget to do so. And so I think it's kind of a Swiss cheese or patchwork quilt, however you want to look at it, kind of thing. And it really just speaks to the district's focus. If they want to allocate funds, if they have funds coming in, they can apply for it to put in that place. So that's my experience.
So then that has me thinking, should KDE require districts to hold a position like that? Should it be a priority for districts to have a position like that? That's where my thought process goes. because, KDE is the head, and then you want kind of lieutenants, so to speak, in each district that are on the local level that can help compile that information. And then the person at KDE is the one disseminating that information throughout the state. That's where my thought process was.
I've got a note in here that there would be kind of a mirror of the manager and again, the note kind of mirrors the same way. There will be these community schools managers at the district and school level implementing the full service community schools. So that would kind of fit also with the fact that that's funded through 2027 now at the district and state level. So that could work hand in hand. Okay. 5 is that a core function of this council is to support KDE or another state partner. So again, we don't want all of it to be like KDE, do all these things. Some of it is just that KDE is saying, yes, we think this is a priority and we're on board with kind of thinking about who may own this. So, might come right back to Chris's shop, might go straight over to PTA. So not that KDE has to do all of these things, but just that as a council, this is what we recommend is kind of missing from the state setup of family engagement. So a core function of the Family Partnership Council, us, is to support KDE or another state partner to launch an online family guide to support families in navigating educational options and rights in the public education system. FPC will support ongoing updates and utilization of this resource. So this is kind of back to the idea of family guides, newsletters, like something out there that's just for families. And whether that's housed on KDE or it's somewhere else, that we're all kind of pointing to it and that this council is making sure that it feels family friendly.
KASC does the agenda news, but the only families that really know about that are ones that have a parent or guardian serving on SBDM. It's an excellent resource. Do what?
What is it called?
Agenda News. Also, they do the training online and in person for SBDM councils, and they focused on family engagement a whole lot of the time.
I think we have them. Will you make sure that's in our?
SBDM is in there. I see that. I don't see K. Oh, yeah, here it is. It's on here.
Okay, great. I'm sure PTA has something that goes out to all of the families.
We absolutely have stuff that goes out to all of our members currently. We could definitely tailor that so that it was directed at everyone. I mean, it's effectively directed at everyone currently anyway. It's just we only send it out through our system that has our PTA members in it. But we could definitely tailor something and post it somewhere. I kind of had a thought. I don't know how feasible it is, but or just around the service in general is Infinite Campus is a tool that Kentucky's already paying for, and seems, aside from grades, woefully underutilized. But I don't know what its functionality is, as far as something like this, or even maybe even something as sophisticated as, since the families are already the individuals are already vetted in Infinite Campus, could SBDM elections be held there? Because the families the guardianship is already vetted. That would, obviously it wouldn't be the only place you would be able to have one. You'd have to have one in person still in some instances. Like a lot of elementary schools, at least here in Fayette County, don't use Infinite Campus. They use other things, but it's still available to them to use. But that could be the platform that we use, or we could come up with a different platform for that information.
Is it a fair statement to say Infinite Campus is available to all families in Kentucky?
As far as I'm aware, yes. Now, whether it's used by everyone, I don't know.
All families with kids enrolled.
Right.
But one of the things I wonder, could it be fixed to where also us with other agencies, if we don't get it directly through Infinite Campus, we want to be able to share it with families as well, right? So we need people sharing it as much as possible. So with different parent agents, organizations being able to share that if you don't have Infinite Campus access.
Right.
So that would be my only concern there, is so that everyone could access it.
Yeah, and I think we would just.
It.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we would just put it there as kind of here's where the families with kids in the system can access it, but we could also put it in other places as well. Absolutely.
I think that's a good idea. I know that at the middle and high school level in my district, most parents use Infinite Campus at the very least to check grades, but we also go in and pay fees through that, and we check schedules through that. And I think that's a great idea.
Were you saying that SBDM elections and meetings could be held virtually on there? Was that what you were saying as well?
Meetings, I have no idea. Honestly, I'm not sure about elections either, but I do know that since the guardians are already vetted and are the only ones who are allowed in, that it's saving several steps that parent organizations or whoever's holding the elections would have to go through in order to vet those people as far as whether they had guardianship or not over a student in the building.
We have a district-wide thing it's an app called Parent Square, and the high school did their election through that. We didn't vote on Parent Square, but all the information about the candidates and how to vote and where to vote, what time, was all on that app. And so then you had all the information in one location across the entire district, so you could go in then physically and vote at the school. So is that what you mean? Through Infinite Campus, you could put all the information there even.
Well, you could put all the information there, but if it has the functionality to, you could even potentially have electronic voting there. The electronic voting was approved several years ago now.
Yes.
So right now, any of them that are doing that process have to take those electronic votes and then take them to the school and vet them against the current guardian list to make sure that those votes count. And then it's just, if you've run an SBDM election, it's kind of a process. But I'm always looking to make things more efficient for the parents, because they would, if they have the ability to do it at Infinite Campus, to your point, middle school and high school especially, not so much the elementary schools, at least here in Fayette County. But they could actually do, vote from their phone or from their computers if it was inside Infinite Campus, the same way they would check on their students' grades.
That would also be that, there's some guidance where, like our SBDM policy, we're looking into reading through it because it says we're supposed to have a student representative on our SBDM council. and every student has an IC account as well. And that would be a really easy way for them to vote if we held student elections.
Right.
One of the things that came up when we first started talking about this a couple meetings ago was that families don't, as a parent, I already feel over communicated with. And so while I love this idea, the reality of, will families read it? And so I think that we would have to think about, now SBDM election, I think that's a different kind of idea, but what I think this one was more about like family guides, newsletters, rights. Okay, so everything we were just talking about with Senate Bill 150, what is the mechanism for that to like get out there? And I think what we were talking about is there's not one. So there's something that gets it out to all the superintendents. There's something that gets it out to all of the teachers, but there's no way in which someone says, what's the how are the families going to find this out? And then there's someone who creates that family thing.
Right. So something like a Kentucky Families Wikipedia or something like that, where we could centralize, host all of this information.
Yeah. And I think we would want to explore what we are and aren't going to house on whether this be a newsletter or a landing page or like what triggers an announcement, I guess is what I'm looking for, so that it's not a weekly thing or a monthly thing, or maybe it is. I just think we should spend some time thinking about what are we limiting it to so that it doesn't become just noise.
Sure.
Like, so people know, oh, if that like alert comes out, then it's something I should probably read.
Yeah. Okay.
They
Or
do have
so
announcements
that's
on.
Mhm.
They have an announcements feature on Infinite Campus, and you can tailor it to how it notifies you, like how often. So you can get it through email and through text, or it can just be on your Infinite Campus account so that when you log on, you only see it there.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because we have district announcements on there, like our Chromebook deployment, our Chromebook fees, our first day of school start date, teacher start date, all that was on the announcements in Infinite Campus.
But I think it also needs to be more than just announcements, like this is what happened, because many times families do not, they don't know how to access the needed information they do, whether it's, okay, what immunizations, what are requirements, what are, going on and searching. You have to be an expert to find the stuff that you need, going on the website and searching. And if you don't know the certain term to look for, we need to simplify and ease the way families can access information that's already there that's so critical to help their children.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I think I'm looking at, for the sake of time, I think this is, Rhonda, I'm going to ask. Okay, I'm going to do the sixth one, and then I'm going to see if folks would, let's see if folks are kind of up for taking on one of these between meetings. I think that like the group kind of task is to come in here and literally like 15 minutes. It doesn't have to be a whole afternoon. You could even do it right when we get off here. Just make sure we're not missing some high level stuff that you know is happening. We've got like local district examples, but this is more of like what's happening as on a systems level. But that is important to also ask from local folks, because if they're not feeling it locally, then that's good for discussion too. So everybody kind of filling out that piece. And then if we could each kind of take on a recommendation to just bullet and think about, so that when we come back on September 7th, we all feel really good about where we land. Does that feel like a good way to move forward? Okay. So the last one is that this council is charged with surveying Kentucky's progress across the 4 missing piece recommendations and adherence to the dual capacity building framework. And again, that's that 4 core beliefs. We've looked at it before. It's the relationship building, communications, thinking about families in different roles. It was that colorful grid that we all looked at a couple times in our first few meetings. And that's the U.S. Department of Education's framework for family engagement. So not only is it wonderful, it also helps Kentucky become more in line with best practices from the U.S. Department of Education. So we're looking at our 4 recommendations that we've already gone over, and then kind of the new family engagement research that's come out since those recommendations. And annually, this group is charged with where are we and what do we recommend. So this would be the first time that this is happening since 2006. So we're kind of like bringing it back. Like we're like, all right, where are we with those 4 recommendations? A lot of progress was made, but it was never really tracked and kind of circled back on. So the 6th recommendation is making the proposal that that's what we get kind of back to the business of doing. So with that, any kind of notes on that one? Who was part of that original group? Anybody? Anybody on our team? Me.
I didn't create that, but from when we first, it was the council was first formed from that. I've been there.
Oh my gosh, that's wild. I do want to pull this up for new members.
Maybe I shouldn't admit that.
No, you should.
Because that's going to show the age.
We need that institutional knowledge. This is the dual capacity framework for those who have not heard of it before. It talks about kind of how you build the capacity of educators while families, what you're looking for as you create programs. It should all be in service to the 4 C's. So we should always be building our family's skills and knowledge. So I always use the example of a Valentine's party. If I go to a Valentine's party, I better be leaving with something I can do with my kiddo at home that increases their learning. So show me a quick card trick to increase math skills. Teach me something that I can do to support my child's learning. Connect me with another parent. So I'm building my like social network around my kiddo. So help me make a connection with either another parent or a teacher. Help me shift my beliefs. If I think, well, I was never good at math, so I won't be able to help my kid with math. You're kind of helping me think through that. And then confidence. I'm leaving with confidence that I can really be my child's partner in their educational journey. So every time we're doing family engagement, we should be building the 4 C's. So when we think about how this couples with our 4 recommendations, the 4 recommendations from the missing piece are really about those statewide infrastructure, like the systems that we're creating. This gets more into the nitty gritty of what a good Valentine's party would look like. So this group is always kind of working in service to both. So we may come here for that school report card, thinking there may be something in here that we want to pull out for that metric. Okay.
Can you go back to that just a second?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I dream of this model in all the time.
Well, we have access to this. Like, will you send it out to us? I've seen this model. I mean, I've been out of the game for other than as a parent, but I really like those 4 C's for just taking back to our PTO and our family advisory council that I'm on in the district. So but I'm having trouble. My old eyes. I don't want to be embarrassed and put on my readers.
Oh, you're great. I'm linking it right here in our document. I also put it in the chat box. And if you go to our family partnership, if you ever can't find your notes, if you go to the KDE website and you go to our family partnership council like homepage, like where we live, you find that purpose statement. You'll find a whole membership list of all of us and our emails, meeting cadence, like when we're meeting next. And then you'll also have a link to the guide that we're kind of adhering to. And it has the dual capacity in there. It also has the missing piece in there. So all of that's there.
Where do I
It-
find all of that? I'm sorry, I was
No,
writing
you're
down.
fine. Yeah, let me just do. I just Googled it, so it's right here.
Family partners. Okay,
Yeah, and I'll put it in the chat box.
thank you.
Yeah. Oh, Krista, thanks, Chris. So if you look here, oh, it's not hyperlinked. This is it. See formerly the missing piece, the proficiency puzzle. So we have updated the guide. Oh, here it is. It's linked right here. Leslie's like, I linked it. You did. So here is our guide, and dual capacity model is in here. And on the last page, you'll find like reference to the missing piece to kind of get you back to. Also in here, we have kind of family engagement and federal and state requirements, just like an overview of like where all you can find family engagement requirements. And kind of where there's overlap and what's required. So this is a nice one-stop shop for all things family engagement. This is the digital playbook that has the actual resources that schools can use based on the 5 objectives. So here's relationship building. And you can come in here and a welcoming phone call. So this is a good resource if you're just advocating on a personal level with a school and you're like, we really need to get better at relationship building. And they're like, what the heck does that mean? Then you can, this is really supposed to be kind of a cheat sheet of tools. Our Frisk loved this. They were our like biggest advocates when we first launched it. Just because it's one place, 10 ideas, and you can kind of click on it and download it, and it's ready to rock and roll. And as you can see, like this one was created by Partners for Rural Impact. So it's not all Pritchard Committee, it's a culmination of kind of the best out there.
Brooke, if I can just be transparent, when I was doing my homework for this session, I've downloaded this and I've been reading it. And I just kept asking myself, why are we answering all these questions? I feel like all the work's been done. I'm like, why are these just not being shared with the districts, and why do the districts, to the point that was mentioned earlier, not have a specific person, an appointee at the school level that is just following this playbook, piece by piece and doing family engagement? I feel like, this is so comprehensive and there's so much information here. That if there were a specific personnel individual at every school that followed this, so many of our questions would be answered.
I love that. I'm just playing catch up, I feel like. So I want to look over.
Yeah.
And when I do go back in the business, hopefully next year, being a parent really changes how you look at. I only had a 2-year-old when I left. So now that I have school age children, it's a whole new ball game going back in.
Yeah.
Eyes are open. I
Sorry,
always felt like I was good at family engagement, but there's a lot of things I'd add and do differently now.
I also threw a link into for the National School Board Association, talking about the national PTA standards for family engagement.
Oh, yes. And that might be a recommendation to align that with what is the updated missing piece in the family friendly school certificate. I know we've explored that, but just making sure that those two are reinforce each other.
Right.
So I'm gonna add, where did you put that? In the
I put it in the chat.
Oh, you put it here. Okay, I want to add it to our document.
That's the National School Board Association's link talking about it, but it also has a link to it in it as well, I believe.
PTA standards, family engagement standards.
Yeah.
So something we might want to look at too when we think about this surveying. I'm going to add here, Jennifer, to your point, let's not reinvent the wheel. And this group is already in service to that guide and those outcomes. So should we add a recommendation specific to the utilization? How do you think I should say that, of the family partnership guide?
Absolutely. It is just, I've spent a lot of time reading this and looking at all of the links, and it is so comprehensive. So many incredible organizations spent I countless hours creating this, and the research that has gone into it. And then all of my independent research ultimately led back to all of the recommendations that were in this guide. And I thought, well, what am I doing here? Everything that I'm looking at falls ultimately back to this document and back to the recommendations of the Pritchard Committee, or Partners for Rural Impact, or the Department of Education, or National Center for Families and Learning and Learning Growth. It was all there. And I thought, well, okay, then what we need to do is create more of a matrix, for the districts, to have someone who can follow this playbook, and then, massage and develop this playbook over time to be appropriate for those districts. That's what, in my opinion, needs to happen.
I wonder if part of the problem, and it most likely is, we have so much turnover. And like Dr. Glass was saying, there's such a struggle to get staff in the building, and so many of them are brand new. They don't know this exists. They've never had to use it, or their successor didn't use it, so it's not passed down to them. I'm just thinking, in our district alone, we have several brand new principals. So if really several new administration teams, period, not just the principals. So I'm thinking that's part of the issue, is they just haven't ever really used that digital playbook and might not know that resource is available to them.
Okay, great.
I mean, there's a month by month breakdown of how to get started and what to do in your first year. Where the research comes from, how to do the full self-assessment, how to get your family-friendly school certification. I mean, every piece of it is here. What to do, where your resources are, who to call.
So we've got 8 minutes left. So I do want to wrap us up, but I think you bring up a good point. I mean, and yeah, I was big part of I know that guide inside and out, and it's a great resource. We would just need to think about what is our recommendation to KDE. We wouldn't want to get too much to a place where we're forcing everybody to use it, but it is the update of the missing piece. So maybe it's within that kind of 6th recommendation, and that we're not, maybe we've evolved from the 4 recommendations that we're looking at right now to the document you're looking at, Jennifer. And so maybe that's what we're looking at and adhering to, and it's the 5 objectives of that self-assessment. So maybe there's something in the guide that is what the FPC is always looking at, which kind of helps with that turnover, is that we're the holders of that guide, and we're helping make sure that it's being implemented. So maybe that kind of takes the place of the 4 recommendations. I don't know. Something to think about, or maybe it's
I think you're definitely onto something.
Okay. So between now and 2 weeks, which is crazy, I would like, coming with the end in mind, what we would like to submit to KDE is kind of a state of the union. Hey, here's where we're at with family engagement. And here's what we recommend. We don't have to get all into how it would be done. That's why a lot of these words are research and explore. We're just sort of looking for permission to say, yeah, keep going. And that being the charge of the FPC when they start meeting in January. And really by this time next year, having much more detailed information about like how these things happen, and start really making progress on them next year. At this point, we just want to say, hey, these are the 3 things that we think should happen and that we're gonna look into more. So with that being the goal, I think we want to get really clean on what these 6 look like. So does anybody feel called to one of those 6 that you want to look at and kind of think through so that when we meet again, it'll be another working meeting like this one, and we can finalize those 6. And I think it would work best in pairs, even if you just kind of meet over email.
But I think it was number 5.
5, Chris? Okay,
Yeah.
you need me to pull this back up, guys?
No, I got it now. It just had
Oh.
me to be reloaded.
Okay, 5. Oh, yeah, great. Anybody else want to work on that with Chris? Rhonda, great. Oh, yeah, Rhonda, good. Okay, and so when we meet, you guys will present number 5 rather than me. So on September 7th, you guys will say, here's what we're proposing to the group, and then we'll agree with you or make changes.
Okay.
Okay, who wants to take on number 4, the KDE position?
I
What
don't mind
about-
doing,
Okay.
I don't mind doing any of them if you just assign me one. I'm just still kind of unclear on what the task is. I mean, are we researching? Because I'm coming in after all of this has already been
Yeah.
done. So
Yeah, I know.
I'm not sure what's, I don't know, are we actually researching more of that or just the wording of it? Or I
Yeah.
just need to be clear on what the task is.
Both.
And I also have to pick up my children in 4 minutes.
Okay. So I think it's more just kind of understanding what the recommendation, what you're offering to the group as a possible recommendation that we would take to KDE. So it is wordsmithing, but it's also like, well, hold on, what about this piece of this that's not very clear? I think number 1 and 2 are wordsmithing. Honestly, I think that's more of just kind of making that clean. I think 3 is a little bit of wordsmithing. I think 4 needs some thought, 5 needs some thought, and 6 needs the most thought.
I mean, I can probably be better off doing some wordsmithing just because I still am trying to figure out, figure out where all of this, I don't have the background of.
Yeah.
But I want to be a part of it. I don't want to skimp out of the work here.
So I think maybe this first one would be a good one, because I do think it's just somewhat kind of squishing 1 and 2 together.
Okay. I'm trying to make it.
Yeah, and also just a little background of what exists in both of those places now. Just a little bit of a copy and paste of what is on the school report card now and on the dashboard, so we can just see that, and it's in our recommendation.
Okay.
Is somebody want to join us?
I was gonna say oh, sorry, go ahead. I was gonna say, is six more of the, go ahead.
Good, Lauren.
No, I'm so sorry. I'm more of a big picture kind of person, and my thought this whole time was I'd like to just sit down and write my thoughts down about how I feel this council should approach things and what overall we should be doing, as opposed to like picking one number.
That, yes, for sure. Also, I feel like that's 6.
Agreed.
I think Lauren and Jennifer, I might put you on 6 together. And if you want to pull me into a conversation, then please do. But I think what you're describing is how does this group function? And I think what Jennifer's saying is we follow the same guide that's already got it all spelled out. And maybe that's a great direction. So FPC is charged with is kind of right now it says that we're charged with advising KDE. So we're not changing that. We're just saying, and this is the context in which they function through. So
I'm fine with that, because I agreed with Jennifer 100%. I have looked through that playbook myself, and I'm wondering why every school doesn't have it and isn't using it.
Okay, so if Jennifer and Lauren, you get together and present to us what you think number 6 should say.
Good.
Chris and Rhonda, you guys will come and tell us what you think 5 should say. I will work on this one with Melissa Goins because she's not here, and that's what happens when you leave early, Melissa. But also we're working on we're kind of working on this community schools manager together. So I think it'll make a lot of sense for us to think about what that looks like long term. And then 1 and 2 is Amity.
Yeah, it's like Amityville Horror, if you know the movies. I've never seen one, or Amity Island in Jaws. My mom was a teacher and she had to find a name no kid had had that she taught. So that's what we ended up with.
I love it. Is anybody left that could join on that one?
If it's just wordsmithing and cutting it and finding the information, I don't mind just trying it.
So I'll put you on that. And I think that we've all got one. And then overall, just kind of adding to this at the bottom, it's just historical knowledge more than anything, you guys, just to get like a kind of current picture of what the heck's going on. Wouldn't it be cool if we had that to compare to in 2006? Just kind of to say, we're kind of watching this grow as we're making recommendations, we're watching the growth. And people got to go get kids.
And get my children. So thank
Yeah,
you.
Leslie, do you have an official way we have to close out? Bye.
Oh.
Thank you for joining. No, you can go ahead. You can
Okay,
go ahead.
thanks.
Leslie, I think we are done, and I'm sure I have an official way to close out.
Do you have folks that are going to be working on 2 and 3?
2 is with 1, so that's
Okay.
Amity.
Okay.
And 3 is, I believe, me and Melissa.
I had you on 4.
Yeah. 3 might get shelved because we got to get rid of 1 anyway. So no one's on 3, and we might propose that one doesn't happen because it might become kind of part of 6.
Okay, great. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion, Lauren.
Lauren, thank you.
I'll second Chris.
Thanks. Thank you, Chris. Wonderful. Everybody in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great. You all have a great weekend.